We have the continuation of Bumbles McFumbles. Which Punch-Out boxer is the biggest cheater? This is part 2, the Rumble in the Jungle. Let's dive into this, shall we? I hear we got some DK to look forward to. I thought the first part was pretty comprehensive. I honestly really enjoyed it.
Time for the easiest pun of my career. It's time for round 2, ladies and gentlemen. To say that the response to the Punch-Out video has blown me away would be an insult to blowing. At time of recording, the video has cracked 1 million views and still climbing. Not only has the video had a big effect on me as a creator, it's apparently also had an effect on the Punch-Out fandom. Seriously, if you check out the Punch-Out wiki, now every fighter that I covered has a section about the rules they've broken. I wondered if this was because of me, but then I saw that they used the word infraction and knew it was me. I used that word about 100 trillion times in the last one, so it couldn't be anyone else. Well, today we're changing some hearts, minds, and most importantly, Wikipedia articles, because we're stepping back into the squared circle to take a look at more of Punch-Out's boxers, to see what exactly they're doing to try and one-up the current reigning and defending champion, Aaron Ryan. It's gonna be a long road, certainly, but the fighters we have lined up look like they're more than good enough competition.
What?
Including one person who I seem to have forgotten in the last video, though I can't seem to place my finger on who exactly. So to start off, I feel it's important to quell or address points brought up by others about the past video. First and most commonly was Great Tiger's head covering being a religious headpiece and therefore protected, and they'd be right to say as such. A turban is often worn by Shia Muslims, and with the rules regarding women's boxers wearing full-body coverings and hijabs, I'm willing to let Great Tiger go on this one. It's not like he doesn't have 8 other rules he's breaking. He's not going to be hurting by losing one.
I think that's a very fair concession to give, though, right? I think that's a very fair middle ground, especially if there are, and I tread around the tops. Like I've talked about, like, I don't really dive into the topic of religion. I really don't. It's one of those fine red lines that I guess broad red line, more or less, that I don't really cross. Like, I'll talk about, certain things, but more often than not, no, I usually avoid the concept as a whole. But in this, where it's a very, like, a very factual, presented piece of logic, right? Very much this is why this would be a thing, right? That's as close as I'm willing to get. So that would be a fair concession, in my subjective opinion.
I want to make a ruling that God himself wouldn't agree with me on. Another common one was the use of a backhanded strike in the ring. It is indeed illegal to backhand, as well as illegal to attack with an ear-clapping move. For that reason, we're adding a few more infractions. King Hippo claps the ears in both his Hippo Squash and Squash and Slam. Bear Hugger's Bear Hug is quite literally just an ear clap. Great Tiger smacks you with the side of his hands when he does the Mirage Dance, as well Don Flamenco gets one for his backhanded slap. It was also brought up that Mr. Sandman did have an infraction, as he uses an overhand punch in his fight. Actually, not only are overhand punches legal, but they're an important part of boxing, only to be used when you have a height advantage over your opponent.
Interesting. So what's the balancing point, right? If we have weight classes, and once again, obviously what I do and what I have done is a little different than something like actual, like, competitive sport, right? Where you're trying to make it as fair as possible, right? There's nothing stopping me from having a dagger, a knife, if you will, going up against a dual, person wielding 2 spears, right? There's nothing stopping that, right? Obviously, making sure all safety is followed, making sure that no one's getting too wild or crazy, making sure that both of us have our authorizations for fighting, right? It's standard SCA stuff, and I'm sure that, HEMA, ACL, sure other organizations would have similar, right? But when we talk about boxing and we talk about, having, weight equaling potentially strength, height advantage and stuff, right? It makes more sense, right? Like, it makes sense why these things exist, right? And I'm here to come in and kind of look at and deconstruct things, not to change hearts and minds, right? The regulations that remain the same. That's just how the sport works, right? So I think it's interesting to look at it from a competitive port standpoint, trying to make things as fair as possible. But if you have a height advantage over your opponent and you're allowed to do a strike like that, what's the balancing point, right? Or is that just kind of one of those, you're allowed to do this if you have the height advantage, which, good luck fighting genetics, right? That's not really a thing you can do. I wonder what the counterplay there is, what the balancing point is in the rule set.
Everybody has a height advantage over you. So Mr. Sandman's punch is clean. It's illegal, however, to hit your opponent with the side of your hand, which is exactly what I call these.
I would assume it's because the area is less padded.
So that's 1 extra point for Von Kaiser, 3 for Hippo, 1 for Bear Hugger, 2 Great.
Also where the seam is, I would assume. And the seam, I'm assuming, can be very sharp if thrown fast enough. Like, a punch is thrown fast enough, assuming the seam could probably tear skin.
Tiger, 1 for Don Flamenco, and 1 more for Super Macho Man. Still putting none of them within spitting distance of Aaron, but that's what the new crop of fighters is for.
Master of Oz. I can't wait to see what Yu-Gi-Oh stuff he has. I saw that he had some. It's going to be wild to go through.
Except, not all fighters are created equal. See, as much as it pains me, a lot of these fighters don't do anything wrong. Kid Quick, Piston Hurricane, Mr. Dream, Mike Tyson, and Pizza Pasta are all too boring to be considered for the list, since they're just box standard boxers. I know Pizza Pasta is someone that a lot of people wanted me to talk about, but trust me, the only interesting thing about him is his name. Also, if I start judging real-world boxer Mike Tyson, I'm afraid he's gonna come to my house and perform amateur brain surgery on me with his fists.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I am not super known on the individual who Mike Tyson is. I hear he has done some not so good things. And obviously you have the whole situation with, was it Jake Paul? I honestly forget. I mix him and his brother up all the time. I honestly, I feel, I want to make sure that I'm being pretty, pretty fair, right? Pretty reasonable. I honestly could really care less if I'm being honest. And I not really sorry. Considering Logan has done things like Lunchly, Crypto Zoo, Dink Doink, the rat CPR thing, the Japanese forest thing, which anyone else would have been banned off the platform for, things like that, right? When it comes to individuals like that, it's mostly that apathy of, whichever individual waves hand in general directly he actually went against. If that colors my bias. I don't know. But, and again, you also have Mike Tyson who said, right, what were his words about something along the lines of people have gotten way too complacent, disrespecting people over the internet, right? Something along those lines. So, glass houses, all that.
Is impetuous, my defense is impregnable, and I'm just ferocious. I want your heart, I want to eat his children. I ain't children!
Other than those guys, everyone else from the arcade games and NES game has already been covered, meaning that now all that's left, besides him, is Super Punch-Out! Categorically nobody's favorite Punch-Out game. Something to get out of the way is that almost every fighter has their coach shouting instructions to them in the ring, ranging from punch good to here's a knife, get him! I'll be including any egregious examples of outside coaching in their score. The first boxer in which being Glass Joe's protege, Gabby J. Just like Joe, he seems too pathetic to be hiding any nefarious tactics, and in all fairness, he isn't. He's wearing his cheating all over his body. See, in boxing, to avoid watching two grandpas fight like a blown call at a Little League game, there are age limits on when you can box up until. Most major organizations place that somewhere around 40. After that, you leave any age bracket created and can't fight at such a high level. Gabby J is 16 years on from when his last fight should have been. 16 years of fighting past your prime, only ever losing, along with the ravages of time mean that Gabby J will be lucky if he ever walks again. This man is trying to speedrun dementia like he's playing everywhere at the end of time at 20 times speed. Other than that, he's fine, but somebody needs to trank this geezer before he tries to come out to the ring with an oxygen tank. After the skippable Bear Hugger, Piston Hurricane, and Bald Bull, it's time to infringe on some copyright with Bob Charlie. Just do as little as possible.
Oh my god. No way they got away with that.
To hide it. He's the best kind of distinct. Legally. So as you can very clearly see, he's got a headband, and what's good for the Honda is good for the Charlie, and he's already got one infraction. Something interesting to note is that since his hair is so long, he's at risk of blinding himself and potentially getting it ripped out from the roots.
That too, yeah.
Overall, that leaves Charlie with 2 different rule breaks. I'm counting the hair as one since I doubt they'd let him fight like that for his own safety. Also, copyright infringement isn't counted since they're not gonna have court proceedings in the ring, so it's outside my jurisdiction. Moving on to quite possibly
Although, that would be really fun, though.
the most famous cheat and punch-out, Dragon Chan is most famous for being the example I brought up last time to bring up how much cheating there is. So, let's get it out of the way. First off, jumping is technically not illegal. It's dumb as hell, but it's not illegal. However, jumping onto the ropes is super illegal. I don't need to tell you that. But then there's the kick itself. Kickboxing exists. And even there, you can't do this. This might as well be the most blatant foul thus far because, yeah, you obviously can't kick in a boxing match. That's the whole point.
I mean, this is the equivalent, like we talked about, I believe, in the last one, right? Where if I'm playing rapier format, right, in SCA, and I have my longsword, right? Yeah, my thrust is going to be legal. But if I say land a chop, a strike, whatever, right? Like if I land blade onto them, in order for it to be legal, right, I do have to draw. So this inherently comes with the understanding of like, yeah, this is rapier format. You're supposed to be thrusting 5-head, right? This is boxing. You're supposed to be using your arms and fists 5-head, right? Like, if you want to do something like have chops and cuts be valid on hit versus having to draw to make them valid, think like a scalpel, right? Scalpel touching something and then dragging itself along it, right? In order to create the incision, right? Like that, because that's the logic going there. Like rapier is just a rapier is a very glorified shiv. And there's a non-zero amount of SCA people who are going to hear that and they're going to laugh because it's not wrong. We're just fighting with glorified shivs. But yeah, you're playing a different format at that point. You're doing like, cut and thrust. You're doing like heavy, right? Like you're playing a different format if you want to engage in those specific movesets, right? Like what I do, I can't shoulder check in what I do. It's weird because how often my brain will result to me shoulder checking, and I've had a moment where I'm in a bind with somebody, like where your blades are together, you're binding and winding, right? And I will shoulder check them, and I stand there for a second, and I'm like, I blink twice, and I'm like, I'm going to take the L because my brain just defaulted to the shoulder check. I am so sorry. Right? Like it's done, in a way that's, arguably safe. Like I'm not like trying to bowl them over, right? I kind of, restrain myself. But like I've definitely run into those moments where like it'd be no different in this situation where if you're boxing and you throw out like a kick or something like that and you're like, wait a minute, right? Wrong format. That's happened to me a non-zero amount of times.
On top of that, he performs the kick in 2 unique instances, once by simply kicking and then by doing his jump kick. But not just the kick is illegal though, as his pants reach down below his knees, his shoes aren't regulation boxing boots, and while the belt does provide a line of demarcation, it in and of itself is an unnecessary accessory and is therefore illegal. Given the fact that he has experience as a kickboxer, the question has to be asked why he felt the need to drop the kick part and try straight up boxing.
Right,
Up next is the boxer I was most excited to cover when we got to Super Punch-Out, and that's Masked Muscle. Being a luchador from Mexico, he's the second boxer thus far to bring an outside fighting style to boxing. And this one is even less of a fit than the last one.
I honestly think that outside perspectives can be really fun though, right? So like, it wasn't an SCA, it was another group that I was a part of and no longer choose to partake with them because of an individual decided to make some not so legitimate remarks holding a dagger at an event about kids potentially getting hurt. So therefore, I do not associate with that organization in its entirety, even if he was one specific individual. I try to not say the name of the organization. That way, I don't have anyone's lawyers look at me, right? Excuse me. But like, sorry, where was I going with that? Oh, outside styles. Yes. I mean, I had in that specific organization, I ended up fighting somebody with one person had a tankard, so they had a rapier in one hand and a tankard in the other. One person had a rapier in one hand and a bailing hook actually in the other because they were using it as a grapple device, right? So, try say thrust with rapier, they use bailing hook to, wax on, wax off status, just, move their arm, at an angle, right? Or rather move their joint at the elbow, right? Being able to catch the rapier and expel it, or at least grab onto it while they came in with their strike, right? Their thrust. Like, I always like fighting things like that because one thing that I will say is if you fight the same people and or the same styles over and over and over and over and over again, eventually you just know what your opponent's going to do, right? Like if let's say I had me and a buddy, we were the only two who were doing rapier combat, right? And we were doing that for like 6 months, right? Sure, we're gonna know how to fight each other, but the moment, and say we're using one rapier each, right, single point, and then I go and fight somebody who's I don't know, using a long sword like I do, like an absolute jackwagon, and then you go like, how, why, or like my buddy, like he fights habitually with sword and cloak, right? So he'll like be able to use the cloak as a grappling mechanism, or one thing which he's done, he'll throw the cloak at you and then thrust in a little bit off tempo from each other, right? Like not exactly the same, but he'll throw the cloak at you, and then in like the immediate tempo after, like immediate interrupt, he'll thrust in to try to staple the cloak to you, which is really fun to watch when it happens. But that's why you get diversity. You fight people using daggers. You fight people dual wielding. You fight people with two-handers. You fight people with spears where allowed, right? You fight people who are outside your comfort zone to get a more complete understanding of what you're doing. And you can even apply, well, this worked against the longsword. Now we're fighting single point again, especially with your reach being longer than mine. This work versus longsword. Does this work here? Yes, no. And it allows you to problem solve a lot better. So I don't know. There's a commentary to be there in more or less words. Bringing styles in, not necessarily a bad thing, but obviously they need to make sure that they're meeting regulations, right? They need to make sure they are operating within the confines of the competitive regulations that they are under.
At least that one had the word boxing in the title. Pro wrestling is about as far from boxing as you can get. So before we get to his moves, I don't actually know what to do about one of his infractions. See, his mask is obviously a head covering, his wrestling tights extend into his boots, and then there are his knee pads. Technically, he's already covering his knees with his tights, but man, it feels like this is even more of a cheat than usual. I'm willing to count this as doubling up, like the ref would ask them to take off his knee pads, see the pants underneath, and just give up. Also, I'm willing to bet that his boots aren't boxing boots, but wrestling boots. See, wrestling boots are designed for the more dogged and flexible style of wrestling, rather than the stance-based combat of boxing.
Sure.
And as such, by using wrestling boots, he has a better range of motion than other boxers.
Whatever is happening here is incredibly entertaining to me.
On top of that, those tights he's wearing have no clear line of demarcation for the waist, and as such are another illegal part. Oh yeah, he also spits in your eyes and headbutts you. However, this is no ordinary spit. As was common in Japanese wrestling, I'd say that this is closer to dokugiri or poison mist. Yeah, in Japan, sometimes they just breathe poison onto each other when they're wrestling. One of the Japanese equivalents to Hulk Hogan, Keiji Muto, used it whenever he warped into his demon alter ego, the Great Muta. Also, the color gave it different elemental properties. Green was poison, red was burning, black was blinding. Man, wrestling's way cooler than boxing. What am I doing?
So I mean, honestly, that's part of the whole like showmanship thing, right? That's part of the whole present them with a narrative kind of thing, right? It makes it more entertaining.
Yeah, if this actually is poison mist, the blue coloring would give it the blinding effect. See, when you spit into somebody's eyes, they don't see in mode 7. So that's a rule break for the spitting, bringing in a foreign substance, and by using that foreign substance. But then there's the headbutt, which seems almost pedantic given what we just discussed. All things considered, and including the fact that his coach tells him to spit in your eyes, that gives Masked Muscle 9 infractions. Still dwarfed by Ryan, but an admirable effort nonetheless. Up next is Anyway, we've come to meet Aaron Ryan on his home turf, and what the?
Is he actually fighting clean?
No headbutts?
Okay.
No elbows? No boxing gloves on string? I don't believe it, but
Look at the Nintendo logo, right? The branding.
Aaron Ryan isn't cheating.
Wild.
All of his moves, all of his movements, everything is perfectly up to board. But maybe you could get him on grabbing Little Mac, right? Well, no, that's a clinch. It's a common move in boxing. It's the reason that Mayweather versus Pacquiao is one of the worst fights ever.
As it turns out, grabbing, there's actually rules around it in SCA. You can't bear hug somebody. You can't, there's weird, like, you can't grab someone's blade, but like if you like take your hand, right? And then make like a V, right? So your thumb's out to the side. It's like palm at screen, right? And then make it into a V, right? How you're kind of cupping your hand a little bit. And if you catch the blade like between your thumb and the rest of your hand, that's technically like legal. Obviously you can't like hold it for certain long. Like you can kind of like catch the blade and it's like put your like make a knife hand and put it in between there. You can kind of like move your hand a little bit and that way it kind of like catches the blade, quote unquote. But you can't like close hand like the blade, right? Like at that point that becomes kind of unsafe. But that's specifically rapier format. If you want to talk about cut and thrust, you want to talk about armored, you want to talk about other organizations as well. Grappling, anything like that, whether it's the blade or the person, that gets very into very subjective territory. So I personally am not used to a format where you can grab people. Would I get? I could see myself being in a format with that. It'd probably be armored. Don't get me wrong. Probably armored combat. Give me in the rage cage, okay? Rage cage. We don't stop till somebody's on the ground. It was really funny. As I said, I wanted to go in the rage cage, and then person at SC just looks at me like, "No, you don't want to do it." I'm like, "No, I don't think you understand. I want to go in the rage cage." And then he looks at like our Baron, and he's like, "Does he know what he wants?" He's like, "Yeah, he knows what he wants." He wants to go in the rage cage. He just wants to beat people in armor. I don't know how to describe it.
I genuinely never thought I'd say this, but Aaron's clean.
Wild.
This makes you have to ask, though, what in the hell happened between this game and We Determined to Headbutt Murdering Psychopath?
Right.
What grudge did the Canadians and the Irish have? Hiki Kagero is next, and with him are a couple of really weird rules. First and foremost is his face paint. Kinda weird, I know, but for the same reason you can't have perfume with Don Flamenco, that face paint could be a grease-based paint, and as such would make it easier for blows to slip off his face.
Could be, yeah.
Speaking of his face, let's talk about what's on top of it. It's clear that Hiki is proud of his hair, despite graying at 19. However, it's even longer than Bob Charlie's, and as a result, it's much more likely to be told off by the rep that he either needs to cut it or get into some sort of braid. If not by just seeing it, the rep will definitely be getting the cutting shears when he sees him use his hair as a whip to smack Little Mac in the face. Once again taken from pro wrestling. So he's literally using a part of his body as a foreign object. While long hair in and of itself isn't exactly illegal, this would certainly set the precedent that it is.
Right.
Other than that, all's well and good except for, the teleporting. Now, you may be tempted to say that this is just fancy footwork with the fact that he's a dancer. Well, let me tell you, this is fancy footwork, this is teleportation. I'm an experienced magic critic now thanks to Great Tiger, and let me tell you something, this is a classic case of teleportation. He even calls it a Mirage Dance too, he was an inspiration. That leaves Hiki with 4 infractions. Mad Clown is next, and if you thought Masked Muscle was bad, wait till you get a load of this bad boy. From the bottom to the top, he swapped his wrestling boots for clown shoes, wears overalls that don't show a clear line of demarcation and cover the knees, and is wearing a shirt which, while not illegal in an amateur fight, would be in a World Circuit fight, which, yeah, I probably should have gotten Mac on for last time, but...
Actually, that's super interesting to think about. That amateur division versus professional divisions have different expectations of them. That's actually really interesting.
His choice of tank top and not eye-melting blue and white t-shirt is what saved him there. The metal buckles and buttons on his overall as well are a major no-no. Also, and...
Can you imagine a punch landing on that buckle and that buckle just absolutely just eating into your skin through the shirt? Yeah, no, there's a reason stuff like that isn't, like, a thing. Come on now.
I only realized this after the fight started, but his ham-shaped head is obscuring a bow tie. How cute! That's illegal. Then there's his face, and he's...
Imagine a punch hitting the bow tie and the punch, say, connecting and going through, carrying the bow tie. Gratz, you are now choking him.
Got 2 different types of face covering. As we previously covered, you can't have face paint, and his is even more noticeable than Hiki's, given the fact that he is, indeed, a clown. But that red nose of his is in no way naturally occurring and is definitely a way of covering the nose when getting punched, which, I don't need to tell you, hurts like hell.
Yeah.
Now, as for his in-ring actions, it's more of the standard cheats like going for an express ear clap, throwing the opponent out of a clinch, trying to chop the opponent with the side of your hand, all the fun of the fair. Then there's his big one. He'll flip backwards into the air and then land on his knee. In boxing, taking a knee is considered down, and as such, you'd be one step closer to a TKO.
Right.
Then there's a small matter of him throwing balls at your face. Those balls are absolutely not regulation. And add on to that, since they weren't inspected by the ref, they could be filled with concrete for all we know.
Right.
And he brought 6 of them into the ring. That's 6 different counts of a foreign weapon. And then there's the fact that he actually throws them. Remember, difference between intent to cheat and actually doing it. With all that, Clown comes out to 17 infractions, which puts him just too shy of Aaron Ryan. And really, that's only because of how many balls he brings into the ring. Pare them down to 1 and he's only got 13. Still the best performance thus far. Great job, Mad Clown. Never come back. Nurses.
I mean, honestly, it's super interesting to watch this because there's absolutely a difference of, like, fighting to win and, you know, I guess fighting for, like, enjoyment or fighting for sport, right? Like, you could kind of, like, throw these all in their different, like, corners of a triangle, right? Like, you want to talk about fighting to win. On authority. Marine Corps, okay? They fight to win, okay? The Gurkhas, I hear they fight to win, okay? And they will use specific tactics, they will use specific things that might not be regulation and other things, but their job is to win? Like, that's part of their job. And so that makes sense, right? And so something like I do, where... Oh, let's go to something like this, right? Something like this where this would be fighting for kind of like prestige, fighting for glory, you know, fighting for kind of like entertainment and stuff, right? Fighting for to entertain, not for entertainment, right? Where it's going to have its different regulations, it's going to have its different expectations, right? I mean, yeah, there's going to be things like ear clapping aren't allowed, certain things like buckles and stuff aren't going to be allowed. You know, bringing foreign objects in, right? You want to keep it clean. You want to make a show out of it, right? And then what I do, you know, kind of fighting for fun, right? Sure, like I have regulations and stuff, right? But even if I'm not saying fighting in SEA or something like that, like I have Shinai, the bamboo kendo swords. Those are great for training strikes, in my opinion. If I were to throw a Shinai at somebody and said, cool, let's go, right? And, you know, we're whacking each other back and forth, you know, blocking each other, winding and binding and stuff like that, right? Like, you're still not like shoulder checking someone. You're still not, you know, grappling someone and throwing them to the ground, right? But you might not necessarily be throwing like, you know, you might not necessarily be, doing things within regulation like you would in like a pro fight match, right? Like it's a little more casual, a little more laid back, a little more like exploratory, even if something like, you know, like maybe you're trying to do a specific series of strikes in sequence, right? And one of them ends up a little too close to, I don't know, like the final strike ends up being like at their like left thigh, right? Which, you know, maybe in a certain professional, you can't hit below the belt in any capacity, right? Even if it's on the outer thigh, right? You know, things like that, right? Like there's differences in these. So fighting to win, which I mean, sure, everyone wants to win, but there's a difference between like fighting to win at any cost, right? Fighting within regulations for, you know, kind of like professional entertainment purposes, and then kind of fighting for fun, right? Like there's I would argue 3 parts of a triangle there. You could probably add more and get like a square or a trapezoid out of that. Sure, go for it. But like there's a difference here. And it feels like why this is important here is it feels like the opponents are kind of combining the first two, fighting to win at any cost, as well as, you know, fighting for in that professional circuit, fighting for the entertainment value, where the protagonist, you know, obviously being within regulation, is really fighting in that second category, the fighting for the professionality, fighting you know, within those constraints for entertainment purposes.
Prince comes next, and I almost want to dock him off the bat for being a literal drooling moron. The guy doesn't want people to punch him in the face, so became a boxer. Oh, I have the best legs in the world. That's why I work as a landmine tester. So from his attire, you can see a few problems, the big one being his Ivy League vest. Not only is such upper body wear illegal, but there's a second shirt underneath. Shirts are already hard to judge, but 2 shirts is definitely illegal. Next are his boxing trunks. Those bad boys need to be open and free, but these ones are practically skin tight. Then there are his boots, or rather the lack thereof. His shoe choice is for a fresh pair of sneakers, which, while stylish, doesn't cut it. However, outside of how he dresses, he actually managed to keep it clean in the ring. So good for you, Narcissus. I'd put this mostly down to the fact that he's so young that he hasn't had a chance to figure out how best to cheat.
Right.
Unlike our next competitor, Hoy Corlow. You thought Gabby J was over the hill? Hoy here is 78 years old. Gabby was only 56. If 40 is the age that you should stop boxing at, Hoy has been going on 38 years past his sell-by date. On top of his age, his weight is extremely distressing. The man is only 100 pounds. Don't fight him, just fucking pick him up and toss him. Then there's his clothing. A big baggy shirt, long pants, and slippers means he's broken 4 rules already. I'm also willing to say that his facial hair is way too long to be considered kosher.
So obviously wearing the baggy clothing, I think we talked about, in the last one, Jackie Chan drunken master status, right? It's meant to help obfuscate hits as far as I understand, or obfuscate the actual physical form. Obviously in certain martial arts and stuff obviously would work. And even then, that's why, like, you know, Renaissance garb, right? Some of it's going to be baggy and loose, right? You know, so if I aim a rapier thrust at someone's center of mass, but, you know, if they're a little thinner than their garb is, right, it's entirely possible that I can kind of whiff and catch them on fabric, which you think would be kind of an oddity and wouldn't happen a lot. There's a lot, and anyone in SCA can tell you, anyone who's done combat like that can tell you the amount of times that they've caught nothing but fabric it's shockingly high. You would not believe how often you catch just fabric, right? Because I think people are moving out of the way. You know, the bagginess of the clothing obfuscates their figure, stuff like that, right? So it's definitely something like you want to make sure you're you want to make sure you're aiming to the center target. You want to make sure you're on target as much as possible. But like, it's the concept of camouflage, right? It's not that you're supposed to fully blend in, which, you know, is a bonus, right? But like, it breaks the silhouette enough. It makes you stop for just enough that you're already got, right? It's kind of a similar concept a little bit. As well as foreign object in the ring with his staff.
Then there's his fighting style. Gotta say, can't find anything wrong here. Okay, so bringing a staff into the ring is ridiculous. He's not even trying to hide it. At least Aaron had the decency to hide his flail down his pants. So Hoy not only brings his staff into the ring to hit you with, but he also throws kicks. But at least his punches are good, right? Wrong, because the only punch he throws is this one. And this is not a punch. This is an open palm strike,
Yeah.
which you can't do. After that, he attempts to backhand you with a spin fist, which you can't do. Also, if jumping was illegal, he'd probably be worth about 10 Aaron Ryans. Despite how much people swore by Hoy dwarfing Aaron, he only gets 11. Not even the highest score in this game. Finally are the brothers Bruiser, Rick and Nick. The most boring way to finish out a game. 2 bald-headed white guys. Oh boy, Rick Bruiser sure was a boring penultimate boss. I wonder what's next. Ooh! So let's go over shared instances of these actual palette swaps before getting into anything unique. First off, despite being the 2 top-ranked boxers in the entire world, or the entire special, I guess, neither Rick nor Nick have a definitive place of origin or age. Seeing as King Hippo had the same problem, it's safe to assume that despite their prestigious position, they don't even have a proper boxing license. Going into the fight, and honestly, they both fight the exact same, so the only main problem comes from them both using illegal elbows. Rick has both a jumping and grounded version, while Nick only uses the jumping version. Not only is an elbow an illegal move, but a jumping attack is also illegal.
I mean, you have to think your elbow is how much bone, right? So the intent, right? The intent, you literally have this padded like glove on your hand, right? You should be punching people with the padded part, right? It's why open palm strikes don't work. It's why hitting from the side, backhands, right? Well, what if I want to hit with the other part of the glove? Literally hit with the padded part of the glove, 5-head, right? Like that kind of keeps like the spirit of the spirit of the sport, but also like letter of the sport as well, right? You letter of the law, spirit of the law, kind of translating it to this, right? But like, yeah, just don't do it, 5-head. elbows as well, not a padded portion of your body, incredibly bony, is going to hurt to get an elbow to the face.
This time I said jumps are allowed, never included jump attacks. That's the illegal part. So that would land Rick with 2 as he does the grounded and aerial forms, while Nick only gets 1.
I wonder if that's strictly so I wonder if that's because of how force disperses, right? So like we've talked about thrusts and why thrusts aren't legal in certain formats, right? Obviously rapier, thrusting weapon, right? We pad the tips of our thing, right? We make sure that those are safe. But it's definitely one of those things where like, why is a thrust? That's it. Why is a thrust? What does it do? It is all force focused into a central point going forward, right? So if you chop with the same speed or you slash with the same speed versus thrusting at the same exact speed, right? You are dispersing the force in a chop or a slash over the length of the blade where it hits, right? And even where it doesn't hit, right? Like it travels along the blade versus a thrust where it's going to be that pinpoint, section compared to a thrust or a chop, right? Thus, when you get, slashed with, a certain amount of force, it's like whatever, right? Then you get thrust with a certain amount of force, the same force, right? And it's like, okay, that hurts. So I wonder, because it's because of how it's amplifying. It's like, why when we thrust in rapier for SCA, you'll actually extend first and then step forward because, and this is actually what leads into this, I promise. Like this is actually building up into why I'm thinking jump attacks might not be a thing, or not be allowed, not permissible. When we thrust in SCA, so you're holding your rapier forward, right? Like think like Alisei from like Final Fantasy 14, right? Like you're holding the rapier forward, right, in your stance. If you want to get the most power out of it, you are thrusting forward with your hand and stepping forward at the same exact time because that is going to multiply the force, right? How we do it safely and how we're supposed to do it, how we're taught to do it in practice, you will thrust forward with your hand first, and then you will step forward. So you kind of step forward to like, poke them, right? And that way you're not, just screaming fast with both a step forward and a thrust forward from your arm, feeding into each other to create a product of more force behind that thrust, right? All that force going into a single point, which is the rapier or whatever sword you happen to be using, could be my longsword, thus potentially causing more damage. And yeah, it's a little different as well if your opponent, say, because this happens a shocking amount as well, where your opponent, I've done this, we'll just walk into the thrust too. And it doesn't feel super good, right? But that's why we do best practice. That's why we do certain things. So if I had to guess from my own limited experience, why a kind of jumping attack wouldn't be a thing. One, it would be unsafe. Uncertainty, you're leaving the ground, right? You're leaving the ground. A lot can go wrong when humans just aren't on the ground, right? JonTron fail half inch in his work safety video, right? Just a lot can happen, right? You don't know if you're going to land on somebody, land on the person in front of you. Person can punch you midair and then you fall weird, right? Falling weird, humans, gravity don't necessarily get along, right? But you also, let's say you're able to jump and like down smash effectively, right? So you jump and down smash. You are like my example with the thrusts, right? And being, stepping into your thrust, right? To get more force and more power behind it. I wonder if acting with gravity is also increasing the amount of force behind that, especially, in a concentrated area like your fist, right? Well, the boxing glove. So I think that feeds into each other. I tried to explain it as best as I can. It would literally be easier if I could like physically show the thing, right? But I would say 1, because it's strictly unsafe. 2, there's a lot of uncertainty and liability. And 3, gravity compounding with the motion could potentially make it just too risky because there's so much power coming behind that it's just yeah, you can't do this. If I had to really like think about it.
Rick still does have one trick left up his sleeve. He's wearing earrings.
Yeah.
Just like Super Macho Man, he needs to take those out before he fights, and as such lands him with 4 infractions to Brother Nick's 2. For once, the little brother wins. And that rounds out Super Punch-Out. And with that, the video's over, right? Except no. No, it couldn't be over. Of course, people were asking for Super Punch-Out, but what 10 times as many people were asking about was for one King of Kongs. Mm-hmm. So let's bite the bullet. Let's talk about Donkey Kong.
Love it. I just can't get used to the new Switch design. Whatever Donkey Kong, whatever's on the Switch too, right? This is the design that's just stuck in my brain. This and DK64. I can't get used to the new one.
Now, I know I've taken a controversial stance on Donkey Kong in the past, calling him a cartoon character for babies, and sure, I may have proof of that in the form of this cartoon for babies.
I need to see the Donkey Kong animated TV show. I hear this is an absolute meme.
But I'm first and foremost a man of the people. So if the people really want me to talk about him, by golly, it's my duty to do it. So let's start from the top. We all know where Donkey Kong lives. He lives on Congo Bongo, as the cartoon explains. However, a group that has no idea where he comes from is the WVBA, as they don't know his birthplace, weight, or height. That means no weigh-in and no boxing license. I also want to quell the rumors that this fight couldn't take place due to animal cruelty. Donkey Kong is an animal that can talk and think for himself, and it's to be assumed that Donkey Kong gave consent.
I mean, so would you like Beast from like X-Men, right? I don't know. Well, I think that's a little unfair because I actually don't know if Beast from X-Men. I would say he still has human genetics in there somewhere, right? I don't know. Like that becomes the topic of like, what do we consider sentient? What do we consider sapient? What do we consider, as being able to consent? And that opens up some other doors for certain sides of people in the internet that I feel are best left closed, if I'm being completely honest. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those you hand wave dismiss. I mean, dude was able to take out King K. Rool, right? Like for funny boxing games, sure, he is able to understand the rules and engage with the rules in a as safe a manner as he can. Flawless.
Yeah, we're doing this joke again.
Me 2021.
Starting off, you might be tempted to say that these barrels and bananas count as outside objects, and you'd be wrong. These fall under the banner of entrance theatrics.
Yeah.
If Deontay Wilder can come out dressed as Rhinestone Skeletor for his fight with Tyson Fury, then Donkey Kong can roll out a barrel or two.
It makes
Before
sense.
we throw a punch, though, we got a laundry list of things to go over first. First things first, we can see that he has personal branding on his gloves and tie. Second, there's no clear line of demarcation between his waist and below the belt created by his boxing shorts. Next, his shorts don't extend above the knees. Also, he's not wearing boxing shorts.
Right.
On top of that, he's not wearing any boots. The tie counts as an accessory. And seeing as we don't know where Donkey Kong comes from and that he's using personalized gloves, it can be assumed that the ref hasn't checked him and that he didn't wrap his fist properly.
I'm gonna be honest, right? Like they could have probably put like red boxing shorts on him, and that would have fit fine, especially with the personal branding, the DK on his gloves and on his tie. Just put those on some boxing shorts, call it good.
Donkey Kong is beating most people in the game without ever throwing a punch. Good thing too, as all of his attacks are illegal. First off is his slam attack. That's an overhead club with the side of the glove, so that's 2 for that. Then there's his body clap, which since his gloves are the size of Little Mac, would result in an ear clap. That clap is also being done with the inside of his gloves. His jumping slam is a jump strike, which isn't allowed, and it doesn't take a genius to see that his taunting pass is excessive and into unsportsmanlike.
Right. Yeah.
When he rolls on the ground,
I think that's a big one people don't really talk about is unsportsmanlike conduct, right? And that's actually something that like was tested for in SCA, right? Where you would have, and this is done in a safe setting, right? Like you would have somebody when they're trying to authorize you, right? When they're going through the authorization process, like, hey, you're a fighter, you're not an idiot, 5-head, right? Which they're very good about. Like they'll like do something that you can't do, and it's meant to like put you in an awkward situation in a safe capacity. I can't stress in a safe capacity enough, right? Like they do a strike that's not necessarily legal, or they grab your blade or something like that, right? It's meant to stress you out. It's meant to frustrate you. And obviously someone like me, it's like, okay, I understand what they're doing. So it feels like the test becomes disingenuous because like I know what they're trying to do. The correct answer is literally to not. And I feel that invalidates it, right? So I don't know the correct way to really do that, especially if the person you're testing is aware of what trick is being used, right? But that's the thing. Unsportsmanlike conduct is absolutely a thing, right? And in what I do, right, I try to be as respectful as I can. Sure, we bow to each other, right? Yeah, we do that. Some theatrics, some decorum, right? But even then, when I spar against somebody, when I fight with somebody, it's never done with ill intent. Sure, in the moment you can maybe get frustrated, you get a little tired and stuff like that. But very much a very sportsmanlike, right? Very much a, we're going to be respectful of each other. And even then, I had a dude like when I went up to one of the events. I was talking about this, a year ago or a couple of years ago, in a reaction I did when I went up to Idaho Falls, or I think it was Raptor War that year in Idaho. Just old dude was just talking to me afterwards at the quote unquote after party, right? The feast that happened later that night. Before I busted out a crap ton of dishes. Which is really fun. And so, anyways, but no, he was talking about just, he, 30 years he's been doing this, was complimenting my swordplay with longsword in a rapier format. So Interactions like that are very much very, very good. Very much what we strive for, very much what people should strive for. And absolutely, you will get people who are just going to be unsportsmanlike. You're going to get people who are going to be rude. They're going to be crass. They're going to be mean. They're going to, and that's where you start to. That's why authorization exists. That's why checks and balances exist, and we need to make sure that we're having a fair and respectful game, if that makes sense. Obviously, a little different than actually fighting to win, because if you're fighting to win and it's your literal job, say I don't know, you're John Marine, right, or John U.S. military, right, you're going to be playing by a little bit different rules, right.
Take a genius to see that his taunting pass is excessive and into unsportsmanlike. When he rolls on the ground, he's officially down since his knees make contact with the floor. And then he throws a massive backhand. Then in the corner, he's seen munching on a banana, which is illegal. You can't eat in the corner. Not that you'd want to, because imagine eating food then going out to fight.
As somebody who drank way too much water on a number of occasions and went out to fight, even just drinking a crap ton of water really weighs you down. You feel that.
They also ask if kidnapping Mac at the end of the fight counts as a rule break. Listen, once the bell rings, they can do whatever they want. It's not my problem. No rules saying that you don't own the loser. Overall, that leaves Donkey Kong with an unbelievable 19 infractions, and in a shocking upset, ties him with our current champion, Aaron Ryan.
Wild.
It looks like the fairy tale dream of Ryan has finally come to an end, as it took a literal wild animal without an understanding of how to box to tie him. Ladies and gentlemen, I couldn't have seen it coming, but what if I told you that, as several people pointed out, Aaron has one last trick up his sleeve?
Oh?
In contender mode, if you lose against him, Ryan will headbutt the camera. Assuming that the camera is meant to be a WVBA cameraman, that means that Ryan will have destroyed WVBA property and has broken one more rule,
Makes
routing
sense.
him up to an even 20. Ladies and gentlemen, your winner, and still WVBA Cheaters champion, Aaron Ryan.
Fair enough.
All right, boys, got a visual. Fire!
Love the battle and boxer archetype. Never really played with it
instead of
personally.
ending one of these with a gag, I just want to take a moment to say thank you. Everyone who watched the last one of these helped support me through incredibly selfless donations and just made the impossible seem possible. You've impacted my life in a way that I'd completely written off. I can only hope that my stupid video helps your day by making it just a little bit better by being funny. And all I can hope is that the rest of these are just as fun as this one. And to finish this one off in the spirit of the first one, with all these new rule breakers on the scene, I think this redesign of Mac is a little outdated. Much better.
He got the double Glock. Oh my god, bro actually got the Akimbo perk. Oh, I love it. I honestly enjoyed this, and it seemed like a lot of you as well at home did as well. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I thought this was honestly really cool to watch. Kind of compare and contrast my own subjective experience with what quote-unquote combat sports I've done, namely, hitting people with swords and me getting hit with swords, right? Very much thought this was very fun, though. I thought this was very, very cool, and honestly, I see why people have been recommending Bumbles McFumbles. Like, this was absolutely amazing. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Definitely go check out the original video. Definitely go check out Bumbles McFumbles, especially if you have not. And I will see you all in the next one.